And we are back, excuse me, with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be going over players that have the most to prove on every single NBA team. The last time we did this, we left off at the Minnesota Timberwolves with Jaden McDaniels. So if you guys are curious on what I have to say about that, you can go ahead and listen to the podcast that I did yesterday. And for those of you guys who are on the video side, you can go ahead and click on the video in the GSMC Basketball playlist to listen to what I had to say about that. And I believe it's titled Players with the Most to Prove. I have 4 parts of that, so this is going to be like part 5, and then the other segment is going to be part 6. And so we have about 11 more teams to go over, I believe. And the next team that we are going to be talking about is the Pelicans. And the player with the most to prove on the Pelicans is the one and only Brandon Ingram. So there's a lot of trade talk going around with Brandon Ingram. A lot of people are expecting Brandon Ingram to be traded or be involved in a New Orleans trade package somewhere in the near future, given the amount of players that they have. They just recently acquired DeJounte Murray. They also have CJ McCollum, not to mention Zion Williamson. And they lack a starting center that can defend the rim. And given the fact that they already have DeJounte Murray and CJ, who are already fantastic scorers, having somebody like Brandon Ingram as a scorer, not to mention Zion, who could be a 30-point per game scorer, doesn't really seem that ideal or as necessary as acquiring a rim protector, meaning that, and this is one of the big reasons why a lot of people expect Brandon Ingram to get traded. So it appears that the Pelicans are going to be moving forward with extension-eligible swingman Brandon Ingram. So if he had more of a trade market, that would probably not be the case. And that's really the big problem, that he doesn't have that big of a trade market. And he used to be a former All-Star and a Most Improved Player of the Year award winner. And he is a very good player, yes, but he's not a great one. So really, he has played 65-plus games as a rookie, and he's really difficult in terms of player to he's a really difficult player to decide how much he's worth in terms of contract negotiations. So this is probably why New Orleans has thought twice about trying to trade him, or thought twice about even trying to sign him to a new contract. And there might be a contract amount at which it makes sense for Ingram and the Pelicans to stay together long term, but it doesn't sound like they've really found it. And there's a quote on this article from Bleacher Report. There is a financial reality to this, Pelicans Executive Vice President of Basketball David Griffin said, and where I think we can go in terms of keeping this group together might not be as far as he and his agency would like us to be able to go. So for now, we're going to play it out. Ingram views himself as a max contract player, and the Pelicans do not. So, almost had to sneeze there for a second, excuse me. So the burden falls on, at least according to the article, on Ingram to change the perception and convince someone on New Orleans or anyone else that he is that type of star caliber player. And that is what he has to prove. And really, it's going to be a difficult task for him to prove that because, again, given his repertoire, he's going to have to score a lot of points. That might be a little bit difficult given how CJ and DeJounte are also very competent scorers, and sharing the ball with him is going to hinder the scoring by quite considerably. But we'll see how the season goes. Next player on this list is one and only Julius Randle for the New York Knicks, easily the player with the most to prove. And the Knicks, they had great moments in last season with the team that they had. They've only gotten better, and because they've only gotten better, it means that they are getting closer and closer to the second apron. Jalen Brunson did take a pay cut to allow the Knicks to maintain a majority of their roster, but going into the future, Julius Randle is going to want to get a contract as well. So it's going to be very curious to see how much money he wants to make and how much he's going to ask from New York. Now, New York wasn't necessarily better without him. The Knicks had a better winning percentage with him than they did without him. They won 63% of their games with him compared to 58% of their games without him. But the optics often seem a little bit superior. The offense appeared to have a better flow without him, and the defense was a lot more versatile without him. Having said that, the lack of a second creator next to Jalen Brunson proved to be the problem for the Knicks in the postseason. And another problem for Julius Randle, and one of the things that I feel like he does have to prove, is that he can be a reliable force in the postseason, because he tends to underperform in moments where he should perform. For example, when the Knicks first made the playoffs with Randle a couple years ago, and they lost to Trae Young, like, Julius Randle didn't play well at all. When Jalen Brunson came onto the team and they played the Miami Heat in the second round of the playoffs, Jalen Brunson was mainly doing most of the work, but Julius Randle was nowhere to be seen. And that's a really common problem for Julius Randle in the postseason, just nowhere to be seen. Not to mention this postseason, where he was literally nowhere to be seen. And he needs to prove that he can be that reliable and competent playoff performer for the Knicks, in order for the Knicks to finally make that next step and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and hopefully beat the Boston Celtics. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing that he needs to prove, that he can be a postseason performer. And it's going to be tough. It is going to be tough to prove that, but he's got to do that. And the next player on this list is for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that is going to be Chet Holmgren. Now, by any measures, Chet's rookie run was a success. And it also was perhaps not quite what OKC needs if they're going to make a championship push. Like, it wasn't enough. But given that he's a rookie and this was his first season, I say he played very well. Now, Holmgren was he was a helpful rim protector and a great support scorer. Having said that, he did get pushed around on the glass and didn't really show much shot creation and really tailed off as a three-point shooter. He went from hitting 39% of his threes before All-Star break to just making 32% after. And his connection rate fell further to 26% in the postseason. So it's like, again, like a lot of the problems with OKC, in my opinion, was a lot of inexperience in the postseason. And most of their young players, the only one that really played fantastic was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Most of their young players didn't really perform when they desperately needed them to against an experienced team in the postseason like the Dallas Mavericks. And the offseason addition of Isaiah Hartenstein lessens some concerns with Holmgren's rebounding, but there are still questions about whether or not SGA has enough scoring support. And Chet Holmgren needs to be that scorer, that same efficient scorer that everybody was gassing up in the beginning of the season. Because before Victor won the MVP unanimously, there was a little bit of a debate between who would win it between Chet and Victor. And a lot of people were favoring Chet because of team record and his efficiency. All of those people that favored Chet ended up being wrong, because that's not how the Rookie of the Year award works. It's that simple. That's how MVP works, but that's not how Rookie of the Year award works. Because yes, he might have been part of a team that had the best record, but you have to remember that his starting point guard was an MVP caliber player. He had help. It wasn't him doing that. And the efficiency, you could argue that the reason why he was so efficient was because he had a great point guard. And because of having a great team, it elevated his game. It's really simple. I'm very surprised that Chet was even considered in Rookie of the Year conversations. But that's just me, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments exactly what you guys think. So we're going to continue on with this segment into the fifth segment, but I have to go into a break for the ads, so I apologize for that. So stay tuned if you guys are interested in how the list is going to continue unfolding. I will be right back.